primary wants. It is all about building a loving family and building an enterprise community that is businesses that will provide a family legacy as I continue to remain as intellectually relevant and influential as I possibly can. And
hey, Larry, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. At
what point in your life did you have this much clarity? About when did you have this? I know it evolves and changes, but when did you have substantively this much clarity about your priority of wants?
You know what, and that's a great question, David, because I will tell you that the pieces kept fitting in between. So, for example, when I came out of law school, I mean, you could only imagine, man. I was now free. I was coupled with a law degree, and I couldn't wait to get into the sporting goods business with Dad, because we had started when Dad retired from the Air Force. We went over to Europe, as you know. I studied in Spain and all that kind of thing. Dad had only had 2 jobs. He had been in the U.S. military, Air Force, and then he went to General Electric and worked in the missiles division. And that was it. So when we came back from Spain, moved to Florida, I said, Dad, the only thing I would really ask you to do, I'm almost there. I'm in Notre Dame. I'm halfway there. I do intend to go to law school. I said, why don't you, instead of getting a job, why don't we start a business? And so we ended up in the sporting goods business. So when I came back from law school, by that point, we had 3 sporting goods stores. With that, I just immediately went into, not the law practice, I went into the business. I went into the sporting goods business. And we eventually built up 9 stores, as well as the largest distributor of athletic equipment in the state of Florida on a bid business basis. So for the state and the county and the cities and the school boards and all that. And that was the business. And here's what I recognized when I started to lecture. I started doing seminars and lecturing. And here's what I recognized. I loved business, absolutely loved business. And I had no interest in sporting goods. So we ended up selling the sporting goods business, and I ended up starting my first training institute. Because here's what I recognized during that period of time when I started to train. I loved education. I loved training adults, and I loved sharing. And you're going to see, by the way, when I get to my purpose, my intentions, my commitments, you're going to see how they manifested for me. And then you'll see how over time. So how did I get to that? Where did I get this? As I began the process of seeing what was important to me and where I could provide value to others. Started in my mid-30s and then got increasingly clearer throughout my 40s and clearly into my 50s. And as you say, it always continues to get clearer. I'm real clear now. But I'm also suggesting that you don't have to get into your late 60s to get that type of clarity, right? But kind of like that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's good. Well, because it's atypical, not for this group, not for our community here, but it's atypical because typically, the higher we go up in the academic educational arena, the more pigeonholed we get. And so our whole identity tends to be around that degree, that profession, you for law, us for dentistry or medicine. And that didn't happen to you. You got your degrees, you went for the higher education, but at the same time, simultaneously, you've been allowing your other interests to take you and develop additional skill sets and find your passion in. So that's what I love about your story, and what I found in my own life in a parallel way is that I had the education, but I had these other interests that fortunately I found people that allowed me to start to express those, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And by the way, that is my fundamental message. What I'm really asking everybody as part of our mastermind community, I'm actually saying, I want you to step back because, and start from scratch again. Start from who you are personally and how you want to show up in life. And then rebuild. from there. And by the way, you might end up exactly the same place, but at least what you're going to do is you'll be living an integrated life, not a disintegrated life. So many people, and I've come across them, as I know all of you have too, they've got their job, they've got their practice, they've got their family, they've got their kids or their spouses, but they're not integrated with each other. And so you have these kind of like silos in your life and in your being that not only don't support themselves, but they actually oftentimes act in conflict with each other, which creates, it's sort of like the work-life balance. Well, I don't even know what that is, because if you're leading an integrated life, you don't need a life-work balance. That is your balance. Your entire life is your balance. So in any event, because I know that as you know, I could do this for several hours. So in any event, what does this then do? With those wants very clear in your mind, what I'm going to ask you to do is you write down for yourself, my purpose in life is to blah, blah. My commitment in life is to blah, blah. My intention in life and my mission in life is to. And so with that, again, there's no way that I can explain to you what that looks like, except to simply show what it looks like for me. And you then do it for yourselves, and respectfully, I share mine with you. Oh, by the way, before I do that, this is from Finding Your Niche, and this I just wanted to show you, because I know that you'll have access to this PowerPoint. This is the personal identification worksheet. I think it's chapter 1, yeah. So it's chapter 1 of Finding Your Niche. Finding Your Niche is a book which I wrote in 1988, and it was intended to say, how do you find your niche in life, in business? You start with your personal, and this is where I came up with the concept of integrational processing. Back in 1988, by the way, David, that would have been, I was 37. So, so I created this concept called integrational processing, and then I created the other concept called functional processing. And both of them are in this book. And the purpose of integrational processing is to come up with a personal identification statement, personal commitment, and here's a worksheet for you to be able to fill out to be able to do that. Then chapter 2 was business identification worksheet. And then number 3 was your market identification worksheet, so that you could align to integrate, if you will, your person to your business to that part of the market that you are otherwise going to be serving. The analogy which I used to explain what I meant, I used to fence in college, was the concept of a fencing foil. Concept of a fencing foil is you have the fencing foil, you integrate it into your arm so that it becomes a natural extension of your arm. That fencing foil is your business. Your arm is who you are. The foil is your business, and where you ultimately thrust is the market. And so the process of integrational processing is to be able to establish your personal, your business, and your market ID. So with that, you end up with a worksheet that you fill out. It's your current reality, and it's the vision of where you want to go with that reality. And then you end up with over to the right-hand side, my personal commitment is to. And then you take that and you go out to what your purpose is, what your commitment is, what your intention is. So taking a look at that and my personal application, what it was for me, my purpose in life is to create the conditions in which personal transformation will be available for everyone. And David, this was the driver of my transition into the training business, which ultimately had, by the time that it was finished, we had graduated 350,000 people across the world, with about 300,000 of those people here in the United States. With that purpose, I then said, My commitment in life is to assist each and every person to be free, healthy, true to himself, and the predominant creative force of his own life. How I wanted to intend, my intention in life is to seek out the truth, to find it, and to communicate it to the best of my ability. And I will tell you, by the way, before I get to the mission statement, because these are all primarily personal, as you can imagine, there's no logistical, tactical application of those. You can take those three and you can apply it in any number of different ways, hundreds of different ways based on the individual. But this was my mindset. And it's a mindset that, as part of my morning prayers, I repeat to myself and have repeated to myself every single day for the past 30 years. And by allowing myself to align in this way, I make sure that I'm staying within our famous, David, our famous language, the guardrails, allowing myself to stay in the guardrails of life, to live the life that I want to live, so that I don't find out years later that that's not where I ended up. And not to say, by the way, that we don't make mistakes. Of course we do. And it's not to say that we don't bust through the guardrails once in a while and have to be brought back in. Of course we do. But this is to say that you do your very best to be able to really understand what's important to yourself and to be able to every single day remind yourself of that as you go through life. How did that ultimately manifest? My mission statement in life is to oversee a loving family and a fulfilling family legacy through thriving enterprises which produce prosperity, productivity, and financial abundance on a multi-generational basis. And that ultimately, by the way, was the tactical application of the purpose, commitment, and intention statements for me. Okay, make sense? Okay, let me kind of go on. On this, by the way, when I talk about lifelong givens, developing lifelong givens, and this is kind of when the 23 and the 26-year-old came in my office the other day. You can go anywhere with this. I would just simply tell you that what is a lifelong given for me? What was essential no matter what I did. I mean, David, I did do some 80 different businesses. Of the 80 businesses that I did, they basically fell into, I'm going to say 12 to 14 categories. But there was no question that I never got into a business opportunistically. I had no interest in a business because it was going to be profitable. That wasn't a driver for me. What was absolutely critical is that I created value, that I created value personally. You know, I have, of the books that I published, I have countless writings that I simply won't distribute because I don't think they have enough value attached to them. So I toss them. So absolute givens for me is value creation. Value creation on a personal basis, value creation professionally and business-wise. And in those, that's why every single one of my businesses has been a startup, because I saw what I thought would be appropriate to create because there was value there and I didn't see it around me. And so I created it. So when I take a look at what is my lifelong given, the lifelong given is that anything I do on a personal basis will create value. Anything I do on a business or professional basis will create value. Those are they're givens. They're uncompromising building blocks for anything that I end up doing in life. That was a conversation, by the way, when we had our last conversation with this colleague of mine on the program, in the graduate program. I said, you know, you need to be thinking then, because she had filled out a personal commitment statement, loved it, loved the process, loved the thought, the thinking.